If you take, like, a Category 5 hurricane, a localized apocalyptic blizzard, and a literally erupting volcano, and you trap them in 3 separate cages, you don't have a zoo. You have, well, a ticking time bomb.
Oh, absolutely. A massive continent-level time bomb.
Right. And for decades, the public has just looked at the legendary Titan trio, so that's Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, basically through the lens of standard biology. We catalog their wingspans, their migratory patterns, what they eat.
Which, to be fair, is how we approach almost everything in the Pokédex.
Exactly. But today, for this deep dive, we are throwing the standard Pokédex entirely out the window. We've finally gained access to the highly classified Project Stromwing files.
Yeah, and I gotta say, the data inside this thing, it fundamentally rewrites everything we thought we knew about these entities.
It really does. So welcome, everyone, to the Ultimate Pokémon Research Lab. Our mission today is to analyze these restricted field journals and figure out what these birds actually are. Because we are not looking at animals today. We're analyzing self-regulating elemental systems. So let's start with the baseline power of the original Kantonian trio. Just to understand exactly what kind of disasters we are dealing with here, I want to jump straight in with Zapdos.
Oh, Zapdos is a perfect starting point.
Right. The field research reports note that it actively nests in the pitch-black depths of cumulonimbus clouds. Like, it doesn't just ride a storm, it dictates it.
Yeah, the electrogenesis data on Zapdos is just staggering. Its physical exertion, specifically the rapid oscillation of its glittering wings, creates friction and static discharge on a massive atmospheric scale.
It's generating its own weather.
Exactly. It actively modulates the barometric pressure, precipitating savage summer thunderstorms and causing the sky to instantaneously darken as it draws moisture and particulate matter together to form its own cloud cover.
Okay, let's unpack this, because there is a detail in the field notes about that electrogenesis that absolutely blew my mind. We know it drops massive lightning bolts by rubbing its specialized feathers together.
Right.
But the Stromwing files state that Zapdos actually recharges its internal capacitors by getting struck by lightning. It literally seeks out direct atmospheric strikes to gain physical power. It is a biological battery that uses a sky taser to charge itself.
It is wild. It's an evolutionary adaptation that creates a closed-loop energy circuit. Zapdos essentially harvests high-energy weather systems, so the storm it generates feeds its own biological reserves.
That is terrifying.
It really is. Field observers note a distinct auditory signature before it even appears. It's this continuous buzz, crack, and snap that isn't just noise, it's the constant ionization of the air surrounding its plumage. The air literally tears apart at a molecular level just by Zapdos being in the vicinity.
So if Zapdos relies on violent kinetic friction and ionization to generate its power, Articuno operates on the exact opposite extreme, right? The complete and total cessation of kinetic energy.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the sheer mechanics of Articuno's cryokinesis. It doesn't just, blow cold air.
Like an air conditioner.
Right, not like an AC unit.
Yeah.
The specimen analysis shows it manipulates moisture at a molecular level. By flapping its wings, it acts as a biological heat sink.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it draws thermal energy out of the surrounding environment, chilling the air to sub-zero temperatures almost instantly. This freezes suspended water vapor, leading to localized snowfall, or, in more aggressive defensive displays, full-scale blizzards.
And the wings themselves. The sources note persistent anecdotal folklore that its translucent blue wings are made entirely of ice.
Which is a common misconception.
Right, because this scientific consensus in these logs clarifies they are actually covered in a permanent, hyper-cooled crystalline coating. That coating is what allows it to pull the heat out of the air. But I want to talk about the historical folklore for a second.
Go for it.
For centuries, Kanto mountain travelers viewed Articuno as a grim herald, the harbinger of doom for wanderers fated to freeze to death. The myth says it only appears to the doomed.
Well, that is a classic case of correlation being mistaken for causation by early observers.
How so?
Modern ecological researchers have tracked its flight patterns, and turns out Articuno is attracted to the thermal signatures of human beings suffering from extreme hypothermia.
Wait, I'm confused here. If Articuno is surrounded by a localized sub-zero blizzard that it creates, wouldn't its own freezing aura mask the thermal signature of a freezing hiker? Like, how does it even see them through a whiteout?
It sees them precisely because of the contrast. Its retinas process thermal imaging entirely differently than ours do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, in an environment where the ambient temperature is plunged to negative 40 degrees, a human body dropping to, say, 90 degrees internal temperature shines like a brilliant, glaring beacon.
So it stands out.
Exactly. It is drawn to that specific frequency of thermal distress. It's basically a biological heat-seeking missile, but it's hunting for a very specific fading gradient of heat.
That completely flips the script. It is not a Grim Reaper. It is an extreme environment rescue beacon,
Precisely.
which transitions us perfectly to the thermal opposite. Moltres, the solar harbinger, the biological radiator. The sources say that when this thing flies, it sheds actual embers with every single flap of its wings, creating a dazzling flare of light that can turn the entire night sky a deep crimson.
And the ecological impact of that flight path is immense. It completely disrupts local phenology, which is the timing of seasonal biological events.
Right, like migration and blooming.
Exactly. When Moltres arrives from southern climates, the rapid, massive increase in ambient temperature tricks the local flora and fauna into believing winter has definitively ended. Trees bud prematurely, hibernating species wake up. It basically forces an early spring just by flying overhead.
But the biology of how it sustains that heat is wild. The field research notes say that if Moltres sustains severe physical trauma, it seeks out active volcanoes.
Yes, it does.
It heals itself by submerging its body directly in molten magma. Let me throw a flawed analogy at you. How on earth does a biological creature use liquid rock as a hot tub Band-Aid? I mean, a burn victim doesn't jump into a fire to heal.
That is true, but Moltres operates at a thermodynamic baseline so extreme that regular cellular mitosis is entirely insufficient for repair. It requires a massive influx of external energy.
Okay, so it needs fuel.
Right. The process researchers call pyrolological regeneration doesn't involve the magma healing the wounds directly. Instead, the extreme heat of the magma instantly cauterizes the trauma, while Moltres absorbs the raw thermal energy from the molten rock, converting it into cellular fuel to hyperaccelerate its own tissue reconstruction.
Wow.
And it doesn't burn because its own internal temperature is functionally equivalent to the magma itself.
They really are just raw forces of nature wearing feathers.
They truly are.
Which makes perfect sense for Kanto, where the environment is defined by these broad atmospheric weather systems. But this is where our dive takes a massive left turn into the restricted archives.
Into the Galar region.
Exactly. We have to look at the legendary birds sighted in the Galar region's crown tundra, because their disaster status shifts from broad environmental weather events to something deeply personal, localized, and violently physical.
The Galarian variants present one of the most contentious evolutionary puzzles in modern Pokémon research. There's an ongoing scientific debate, often referred to as the Convergent Naming Theory.
Convergent naming theory, okay.
The Pokédex entries and field logs strongly imply they might be entirely unrelated species that were named after the Kanto birds purely because of behavioral and superficial similarities.
So why the radical divergence? I mean, why do Kanto's birds control the sky while Galar's birds are these localized nightmares?
The prevailing hypothesis in the Stromwing logs points to the ambient elemental energy of the regions. Kanto's atmosphere is rich in volatile elemental fuel.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the crown tundra in Galar is incredibly harsh, and elemental energy is scarce. Without a rich atmosphere to draw from, these creatures had to adapt. They couldn't afford to waste energy modulating the weather.
So they had to adapt inward.
Precisely. They had to internalize that power into extreme physical and psychic adaptations just to survive as apex predators.
And when you look at the data, you can see that internalized power immediately. Let's look at Galarian Zapdos. The Kantonian Zapdos is a storm creator. Galarian Zapdos traded sustained flight for terrestrial speed.
It is a totally different beast.
It really is. It is a belligerent predator that thirsts for close-quarters combat. The field tracking clocked this thing running through mountainous, jagged terrain at speeds exceeding 180 miles per hour.
Yeah, its wings have severely atrophied to the point where it can barely sustain glide paths. It reallocated all that biological energy into extreme lower body musculature and localized static generation.
It is basically a feathered sports car with a lethal roundhouse kick.
That's an incredibly accurate description.
The restricted logs explicitly state that a single kick from Galarian Zapdos can pulverize a heavy industrial dump truck into scrap metal. And the wildest part, the only reason early researchers even called it Zapdos is because when its feathers rub together during a full-speed sprint, they produce a sharp, crackling sound.
Like a spark?
Yeah, it mimics the zapping of high-voltage electricity. It's essentially a sonic illusion.
The physical force it generates is so immense it literally mimics a thunderclap. And we see a similarly radical internalization with Galarian Articuno.
The psychic one.
Right. Kantonian Articuno manipulates atmospheric moisture. Galarian Articuno trades that environmental control for advanced psionic capabilities. It doesn't freeze the air around you, it freezes your mind.
The descriptions of Galarian Articuno in the field logs are genuinely terrifying. It uses raw psychic energy to keep itself airborne, barely ever flapping its wings.
It just floats.
Yeah, and instead, those wings are lined with feather-like blades composed of solidified psionic energy that can slice through thick iron sheets like tissue paper. But the scariest part is its signature move, freezing glare. Is it just shooting like a cold laser out of its eyes that turns a target to ice?
Not at all, and that is exactly what makes it so dangerous. There is no actual drop in temperature.
Wait, really?
Yeah, freezing glare is entirely neurological. It fires concentrated beams of psychic energy from its eyes that intercept the opponent's motor signals. It essentially severs the connection between the target's brain and their muscular system.
Oh, wow.
It induces a total, immediate paralysis. The victim is left entirely immobilized, fully conscious, but locked in place as if they were encased in solid ice.
That is horrifying.
It is, and that terrifying mimicking effect is what earned it the Articuno nomenclature. One freezes your cellular fluids, while the other freezes your central nervous system.
Which brings us to the one that genuinely makes me shudder. Galarian Moltres. Kantonian Moltres is a symbol of renewal, bringing spring and life-giving warmth. The Galarian Moltres is a malevolent specter.
It is the polar opposite.
It exudes this sinister, volatile, dark aura that looks like molten fire, but operates on a completely different, horrifying frequency.
The energy blazing from within its body is so overwhelmingly oppressive that the field logs note most native Pokemon will completely abandon their territories if it simply flies overhead.
Just from its presence alone.
Yeah. It attacks by spreading its wings and unleashing an aura that targets the minds of its foes, inflicting deep spiritual fatigue.
Let me push back on this with another flawed theory. When the notes say its signature move, Fiery Wrath, literally consumes the spirit of its victims, leaving them as burned-out shadows.
Yes.
Is it using some kind of localized black hole? Like, is it gravitationally burning away their cells?
No, it's not a physical or gravitational burn at all. It is pure psychological and neurological exhaustion weaponized to a lethal degree.
So it's all in my mind.
Exactly. It bypasses physical hide, armor, or environmental shielding entirely. The dark energy hyperstimulates the fear and fatigue centers of the brain while simultaneously draining the victim's vital energy.
Oh, man.
It burns away a trainer's resolve from the inside out. You aren't left with physical burn scars. You are left in a state of profound catatonic apathy. One heals through literal fire. The other consumes the will to live.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Now that we have all 6 profiles laid out, the atmospheric Kantonian Titans and the brutal Galarian Predators, we have to debate this.
Let's do it.
If you were a field researcher or just a very unlucky hiker out in the wild, which of these birds is the absolute most dangerous to encounter? I am planting my flag firmly with Kantonian Zapdos.
The original Stormbringer?
Yeah.
Okay, defend that choice.
It comes down to sheer, unpredictable collateral damage. Galarian Zapdos might kick a dump truck, but if I'm paying attention, I can see a 180-mile-per-hour terrestrial bird coming.
Fair point.
But a Kantonian Zapdos intentionally generates savage summer thunderstorms just by existing. You're dealing with localized flash flooding, zero visibility, hurricane-force winds, and a creature that selectively drops massive lightning bolts from pitch-black cumulonimbus clouds.
It is a very wide area of effect.
Exactly. It is the ultimate unpredictable hazard. You simply cannot outrun a storm system that is actively intelligently hunting you.
It is a compelling argument from a purely destructive area of effect standpoint. The collateral damage is undeniable, but I have to counter it with Galarian Moltres.
The soul consumer.
Yeah.
Really? How do you defend the psychological horror over a literal lightning bolt?
Because of the impossibility of defense, a thunderstorm, even a sentient one, operates on the laws of physics. It can be tracked with Doppler radar.
That's true.
You can ground yourself, you can find a Faraday cage, you can build a physical shelter in a cave. But Galarian Moltres exudes an oppressive aura that ignores physics to target the mind entirely.
You can't hide from it.
Right. You can't build a shelter to protect your resolve. If it targets you and begins to consume your spirit, leaving you as a burned-out shadow, there is no emergency medical evacuation that can resuscitate a collapsed will to survive. It dismantles your ability to fight back before it even touches you.
That is incredibly bleak. And to you listening right now, what stands out to you? Would you rather face the literal lightning rod that controls the sky and turns the environment against you, or the soul-consuming shadow that bypasses your physical defenses to burn away your willpower?
Both are terrible options.
It is a nightmare scenario either way.
And the most terrifying reality found in the restricted Stromwing logs is that in certain catastrophic scenarios, you might not have the luxury of choosing just one.
Exactly. In Oblivia, a militant group known as the Pokémon Pinchers systematically targeted and shattered ancient monuments called involiths.
I saw those in the notes. What exactly is an involith?
It's essentially a massive stone dampening field.
Okay.
They emit natural aura frequencies that pacify high-tier legendary energy. By destroying these dampeners, the Pinchers were able to deliberately awaken and mentally enslave the 3 legendary birds.
And they didn't just put them in cages to look at them, they hooked them up as biological engines to power something called the Sky Fortress.
Yes, which was a massive floating weapon of mass destruction.
They literally took the planet's climate regulators, plugged them into a ship, and weaponized the weather.
It definitively proves that their power, if harnessed maliciously, is enough to hold entire continents hostage. The balance is so delicate.
Which brings me to the absolute most mind-blowing part of this entire deep dive.
What's that?
We've established that these are walking, flying, dump truck kicking natural disasters that hold the planet's weather patterns together.
We have.
We know capturing them triggers a planetary failsafe. So who are the absolute madmen whose resumes include taming these things? If we examine Brandon, the Pyramid King from the Hun region's battle frontier, his methodology provides a really clear blueprint.
Oh, Brandon. He commands all 3 of the Kantonian birds, alongside the legendary Regi trio, right?
He then essentially mirrors the passive equilibrium of the trio within himself.
But if Brandon represents endurance, we've got Dana, the Battle Chatelaine from the Battle Maison, and she represents the absolute pinnacle of cognitive processing and spatial coordination.
Oh, Dana's tactical setups are legendary.
She commands the same lineup, all 3 Kantonian birds plus the Regis, but she deploys them in the triple battle format.
Which is just a nightmare to face.
Have gym leaders. Cadence of Sinnoh uses Articuno, Volkner uses Zapdos, and Byron uses Moltres. But let's look at the legends of Pallet Town.
Oh, yes.
Trainer Red boasts an Articuno. Blue commands a Zapdos.
We have Leaf, who caught Moltres while traveling through Kanto.
Gym leader Bede uses Galarian Articuno.
Oh, right.
Hop uses Galarian Zapdos, and Spike Myth gym leader Marnie uses Galarian Moltres.
Wow.
But we also see darker applications. We can't forget Grandmaster Greevil of the Cypher organization.
The shadow Pokemon.
Exactly. He operated out of Citydark Isle and managed to possess corrupted shadow versions of all 3 Kantonian birds.
Shutting off their empathy and turning them into pure destructive fighting machines, which is a whole different level of terrifying.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? When we look at the whole stack of sources, from the terrifying Stromwing data explaining cryogenic regulation and billion-joule capacitors,
Right.
all the way to May's household appliance team, the core takeaway is that the legendary birds are not just rare collectibles.
No, they aren't.
They aren't just shiny trophies for a champion's belt. They are the actual load-bearing pillars of the planet's weather patterns and ecological survival.
Precisely.
They demand awe, they demand respect, and they demand you stay completely out of their way unless you want a dump truck kicked at your head.
They absolutely command respect. If the weather is acting up, it might just be because someone caught a Zapdos in the next region over.
It really does change everything. You know, we started this deep dive thinking about wildlife in terms of scale, but when you look at the meteorological madness of trying to catch a living, breathing hurricane in a baseball-sized sphere, suddenly the whole system is just beautifully, terrifyingly murky.
It really is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the lore, keep asking questions, and for the love of everything, if you see a glowing bird in a thunderstorm, just run.